G'day, Professor Joseph Drew here. I'm here to talk to you this time about why government ought to be a moral endeavour. This is the most neglected fact in democracies, is that government is a moral endeavour. It's not something that was ontologically placed on top of us when we were first created or evolved or whatever you'd like to think happened. It is something that we've decided to do for a particular reason. In this video I'll tell you the reason why and why it's important to know the difference between moral government and a government in a moral vacuum, and what it means for you personally. So the picture you see here is, I'm given to understand from the internet, a picture of Al Capone and his fellow mobsters. Now, Mafia mobsters, they move into an area, they wind up at your restaurant or your premises, they knock on the door and they demand money. They demand money in exchange for protection. If you pay them the protection money, your place doesn't get trashed, you don't get killed. If you don't pay them protection money, then there's significant consequences. Now, if you don't have moral government, how is your government any different to Al Capone? I know that's a controversial statement, but they extort and extract money through force from your income and your wealth, your taxes. And in return, they pledge to protect you and maybe even give you some support if you fall in hard times. And if you don't pay, they come with the force of the state and they drag you off to the court, seize your house, sell it from underneath you, and or stick you in jail. How is that different to Capone? If that's the basis for our government is like a group of mobsters. And we simply accede to their demands for money because we're afraid of the force. There's got to be a better reason for government than that. And indeed, a natural law philosopher, and please check out my other videos on natural law philosophy, there's plenty of them, and I am a natural law philosopher obviously, gives us a better reason than that contract theory. You know, that we were worried about what people would do to each other if we didn't have the protection of the government. Therefore, we gave up freedoms. Therefore, we gave up money in order to buy this protection. A great big government-level protection racket. No, that is not the reason why we have government. We have government to facilitate cooperation. Humans are social beings. We need the cooperation of others to achieve our ends, to be all that we can be, to flourish, to experience eudaimonia. And government is there to facilitate that cooperation, to protect and foster that cooperation, which is called the common good. That is the reason for government. Government is not a group of mobsters extracting through force. They ought to be, instead, a group of facilitators, giving us good reasons for cooperating, fostering the cooperation, and showing us the benefits of cooperating and working together as a community. Now, there's a lot of reasons for why government should be a moral endeavour, apart from the basic premise of natural law, which I just talked about, the common good argument. One reason is that government should act for good reasons. Acting for good reasons is called practical reason in natural law philosophy. And practical reason always has to be orientated towards ultimate ends. What are the good ends? Well, Maimonides told us it was possessions, health, having morals and being able to interact as a society, and also knowing truth, being intellectual. Now, if we're going to orientate government to good reasons, for doing things for good reasons, and they're going to share these good reasons to us, then they have to have an understanding of these ultimate ends. And an understanding of these ultimate ends requires government to be a moral entity with a moral understanding. Otherwise, they will be directionless. So if we want governments to act for good reasons, we have to have governments understanding the legitimate ends of the human person, the excellences of human. Once they start doing that, they're doing a moral process. They're doing moral thinking. They're doing a moral syllogism. And it becomes a moral endeavour. And of course, government is people acting en masse. Democracies and economics are supposed to be based on utilitarianism, the greatest good for the greatest number. Unfortunately, I think most of us know all too well that it's degenerated to mass egoism. Everyone's voting for things that help them personally and acting for their own self-interest. Not everyone. There's some people thinking about others, but the majority are acting in their own interests. Now, whether they're doing that or whether they're acting for ultimate ends, as the natural law philosophers would like them to do, and acting for virtuous reasons and to promote virtue and promote human flourishing, or if they are acting for the greatest good, the utilitarian concept, whatever, they are acting in a moral way. Interactions between people can't happen in a moral vacuum. Our governments are a reflection of our moral state of our society. And to be frank with you right now, governments across the world tell a dismal story. Tell a dismal story about egoism and escaping blame. There's very little altruism. There's very little concern for human dignity. There's misplaced concern for the common good. It's a pretty dismal story at the moment. Truly, in the words of the famous William H. Riker, truly political science is the dismal science, not economics at present. So what happens when we forget the purpose of government, which is that common good, facilitating cooperation, fostering cooperation? When government does those things, it is an excellence. It is doing what it was designed to do. When it doesn't do those things, when it doesn't think about the common good, when it doesn't think about the moral aspect of public policy, well, then it's defective. They are the terms of Aristotle. If a thing does what it should do, it's excellent. When it doesn't do what it should do, doesn't do what it was designed to do, it's defective. Now, in our ordinary life, if we have the choice of buying a product that's excellent or defective, we choose the excellent thing. I wonder why so many of us are choosing the defective thing when it comes to our government. It's an interesting question, isn't it? But when we do end up with governments operating in a moral vacuum or operating through the ethical paradigm of egoism, really bad things happen, as we've seen recently in COVID and a lot of other examples. Compulsory donors, taxpayers, that's what they are, compulsory donors. You donate the money to the common good or you go and get hauled off to jail. They're exploited when we have government in a moral vacuum. When we have government that doesn't recognise the age-old ancient principles of natural law philosophy, we end up trampling and eroding human dignity. We no longer get to do the things that make us human, the things that are the excellences of human. Planning, choosing, abstracting and reflecting. We just don't get to do those things anymore, as people in Victoria found out when they were locked in their houses for 240 odd days. When we have government operating in a moral vacuum, it undermines the whole reason for government. The only thing they have left is force. They end up being mobsters. They end up being Al Capone. And we've seen a lot of disproportionate force in use over the last few years. Is that a reflection of the fact that they've lost their moral legitimacy? They've lost their way. And they've had to resort to force, just like mobsters do when you don't pay your protection money. And fourth, when we operate our governments in a moral vacuum, democracy deteriorates to egoism or mass. It's the mob rule that Plato decried, and it's what I decry. Our democracy, certainly in Australia, is very sick. A lot of our leaders are brazenly immoral and egoistic. A lot of our voters are voting for their own self-interest, not the interest of the community. Our government is extorting too much tax. And some of that money, at least, is being used for the self-interest of our politicians. And that's just plain morally wrong. But people aren't prepared to talk about morals and the wrongness or rightness of things anymore, because you get shouted down and you get vilified. And I guess it's a good thing that I'm old, because these sorts of things don't matter as much to me anymore. Look, if you found this video helpful, please do me a couple of favours, send it around to someone else. subscribe. Lots of people watching our videos, 400 or 500 most month, but I need more subscribers to justify my time. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.